Okay, hello, welcome back to another game of chess. Today we are going to play a Sicilian defense against e4, but I have no intention of playing any established theory apart from the hyper-accelerated pterodactyl, sacrificing the pawn on c5 to then play queen a5 and say, you know what, it's not really a sacrifice, we're going to win that back, get the queen active, play something very offbeat. Doubtless our opponent will not have seen this. They play d5, we'll play d6 here, and we will transpose into something that looks a little more like a Benoni, although they put the knight on c3. Interesting. So I was expecting maybe c4, and then we'd be in a very much Benoni-like position. I could even play a Benko gambit and knight f6 in castle, but putting the knight here is an interesting move because we can just take this, and admittedly we give up a very good bishop for an average-looking knight. Okay, I'm going to play a6. I think it's a move that makes a lot of sense. It allows b5 at some point, and we can potentially attack down this flank of the board. So I don't know, it looks a little strange on here on the queen side, but only because I'm used to seeing a pawn on c4. And so I guess the point is now that we can go knight f6, we can castle, we could probably play bishop g4, or we can go b5 and we can really try and expand with like b4, a5, a4, a3. We can really try and get like a big connect 5 along with this bishop, which of course synergizes quite well. As the bishop controls all of the squares and so with the pawns. So I mean, trying to dominate these dark squares on this main diagonal of the board is definitely a pretty cool idea. I mean, they can just, you know, develop some bishops, castle, standard stuff. It's not like I'm doing anything revolutionary here, but they play a4 to prevent b5. It's annoying, and it's probably the best move. What if I play queen a5? You just play bishop here. And then b5, like, you can take because I can't take here. That's annoying. Okay, knight f6. Kingside castles. These moves have to be played at some point, I think. Else, I mean, we're just going to leave the king in the center, and that is seldom a good idea. Now, opponent could play a5, and it would be very annoying because it would basically never let me play b5. I mean, we still could play b5 at some point because they don't have that pawn on c4 defending the b5 square. But they play, okay, they play h3 to rob my bishop of the potential g4 pinning square. That makes some sense. I'm in a castle. Likely they were bishop e2 or, okay, bishop f4, interesting. Maybe looking to push forward. Or, okay, maybe h3 wasn't to rob my bishop of that square at all, but instead to stop knight h5 being a problem because then bishop can go back to h2. However, boys, what I will argue is that knight h5 is a good idea anyway. Why, you may ask? Because after the bishop goes back here, which presumably is the reason they have gone h3 and then bishop f4. So I'd expect to see this relatively quickly, or not. I was going to say that takes it off this diagonal here, and then we can go queen a5 without bishop d2 being a response, and put a load of pressure on this pinned point on c3. Maybe look to play b5, etc. But okay, now we've just got a knight on h5. I don't know if that was a great idea. You know what, let's play queen a5 anyway. Why not? Things are getting a bit clogged up down here, a bit clunky. Perhaps. And I'm kind of tempted. Oh, you've lifted the queen. The rook's not protected. This pawn is now pinned to this rook here. I can play b5. I can play b5 and I'm going to. There we go. Nice. And if, for instance, you sack your knight because if I take it back, well, I mean, that wouldn't even work because the rook takes the queen, but if they did, we could just trade the queens and then take the knight. And I don't know, this is a huge success being able to play b5 here. a4 is rendered completely redundant by our queen on a5. Probably they should have played bishop d2, to be honest. And if they do play g4 at any point, I'm actually happy to just go back to f6. I think this probably weakens their kingside more than it threatens my kingside, because I don't see them castling queenside to much effect when we are marching through with the b and the c pawns. Let's say they just play bishop e2, for instance. Just ignoring what I'm doing here. Do I play b4 is the real question. Knight here to hold the b2 square for my bishop? No way. Bishop e2, b4, knight d1. Is that really what we're about to see? I mean, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's get the connect 4. As I was mentioning earlier in the game, this diagonal is mine for the taking. The knight goes back to d1. Wow. I guess at some point they're going to play c3. And I want to be able to play a5 when they do so to, you know, really reinforce this pawn. So I think moving the queen now, I mean, it served its purpose. There's no reason for it to be on a5. It's just kind of in the way. So I think I'm just going to move the queen. Now, I don't want to go here because then, you know, we're just walking into a pin for no reason. c7 seems like the right square because I think, you know, we don't go on the back rank and then potentially restrict the movement of rooks later in the game. So I would be a little annoyed if our opponent played a5 here, which I think would be a good idea to really lock my pawn on a6 and then to play c3 and, you know, be very patient and break at this structure. It's not a disaster if they play c3, but yeah, you see they don't. Now I'm going to play a5. I'm going to take that opportunity because they've let me. They've one move, and they've let me play a5. And now I think my bishop can finally find an avenue of development, maybe just even to be traded off, of course, via a6. And if c3, you're not really threatening to take, because then I take here, open my a file. This is as strong as ever. I mean, we'll look at the engine, but if the engine says that pawn to a5 from white's the best move, I'll be quite happy about that, because I think that will tell me I've got a pretty good understanding of some positional concepts, which, you know, seldom feature in my chess. No pieces have come off the board, by the way. It's moved 13, and we've not seen any trades as they play knight e1. Supposedly threatening to take this, I guess. Play bishop a6. If you take, I take here. King takes, I take. I actually hate that because then my king's really weak and we're only up in exchange. I might be winning, but I don't think it's a very good idea. Let's go knight f6, just bounce back. I mean, we can do so with tempo on the pawn. Maybe they play bishop d3, maybe they even play f3 or something, I don't know. But again, this knight can't really move. They do play f3. Very positional game. But a lot of dark squared weaknesses over here. And in fact, why on earth would I not go back to h5? It genuinely feels like a good idea to go back to h5 and threaten this fork here. Maybe after here, I don't know, they do this. I mean, the only way you're ever actually kicking me from there, I guess they could play f4. You know what, boys? I don't know if it's the best idea, but I'm going back to h5 just because it's funny to just bounce around with the knight like this. I mean, you've created a hole on g3. A square which no pawn will ever defend. Bishop f2 now. Look at all these pieces. What on earth? What on earth? I guess everything's really solid and held, but nothing can really move very well or very effectively. I guess bishop e5 would make some sense. And we, yeah, you know what? Let's do it. f4 is not a move. You've just cut off your bishop and your rook's control of f4. So, you know, bishop e5. I mean, there's a dark squared weakness here. And a rook that looks like it might be about to be trapped, because what on earth are all these pieces doing here? Rook a2. Look. What? Okay, I mean, this is just ridiculous. Now I'm just going to play this, right? What on earth is that? I guess they want to push the pawn without hanging the rook? This has to be a good move. Knight to g3. You have to take unless you want to lose an exchange. Or for that matter, takes bishop a6. And so if you take here, you're giving up your dark squared bishop when you have pawns exclusively on light squares, ignoring the pawn on b2 because who actually cares? So they move their knight. I can just take this, or I take this. Queen takes and bishop a6, because if you go c4, I take en passant. Oh, I really like this. We could of course take here, but I really like the tactic of grabbing that bishop. Wait, can they just play knight here? This is where I start crying. I guess bishop a6 is still appropriate. They're going to play knight c4 or even knight d3. On what planet was that a move? Just take the rook. I trapped a rook and I didn't take it. Now I still have ideas of expanding this way, but then you just take my bishop. And I really want that bishop on the board. You know what? We're just going to drop the bishop back to g7. I still think I'm in a great position. I think this bishop is great. I think this bishop is great. I don't know why I didn't cash in on the material, but actually, I don't know. Having the bishop pair, you know what? It was intentional. It was completely intentional. Okay, the thing is now I can play c4. Oh, it has to be this, right? c4? We attack the knight. The knight must move. Where to? I mean, either back to here or to f4. f4, there's nothing wrong with f4. It looks like a great square for the knight. Feels a bit loose, maybe. But the point is, we're playing c3, baby. With tempo on the queen and maybe taking this, held by the bishop. Got a passed pawn there. Finally moving this knight. Okay, it has to be this, right? It just has to be, surely. Or we sack the bishop and then do this? Is that even more accurate, maybe? Boys. Bishop b2, I think. I should have said that with a lot more confidence. But if you play rook takes, I will go c3, attack the rook and attack your queen. If you do not play rook takes, then we've won a pawn for free. Maybe c3 immediately was more accurate. Who knows? Because the queen moves, we then take there. Tempo on the knight moves. I just don't think we're actually promoting that pawn. So I'd rather win a free pawn. Lovely. Now, I want to move this bishop back and I want to go c3 with tempo and lock in this rook. Is that a good idea? I think that's a good idea. We don't want to go here and lock in our own bishop. Okay, let's bring the bishop back. We've grabbed a pawn. We've won a pawn here. Now, genuinely, I think I'd rather have the bishop pair and a pawn up than just have that terrible rook from f1 for the price of my knight. I don't know. Maybe it was an accidental, ingenious sacrifice, but you can't push this because I just take. It's not even some kind of positional, you know, double up my pawns to then win them with the pieces. You can't do this, I just take with the piece, I drop back, life is good. And so if you can't stop me pushing this, then I'm going to push it. So the queen moves so that it doesn't happen with tempo. I think I'm going to push it anyway. Or knight d7. Let's just push. I think this bind on the position is so strong. I think this rook is made very much worse, although I have just by pushing it given the knight much more scope. That might have been a bad idea. But knight d7, knight f6 will come with tempo on the queen. I'm a pawn up, I have a bishop pair here. Yeah, pushing this. I think I, thought I was Karpov maybe. I'm clearly not Karpov. I could grab this. Does it help? I don't think so. Here, queen f3. Oh, I don't want that knight there. I don't want that knight there. Right, boys, we're giving up the bishop pair because I really don't want that knight there. Then I'm going to play... What am I going to play? Knight f6, hit the queen, pressure on a pawn. What am I doing? e6, if takes. We open up the rook, maybe? I just need to move now. This positional masterclass has been fated to end in a flurry of terribly inaccurate tactics. Starting with e6. I want to break open my f-file. How about that? I need to use my rooks somehow. I'm still up a pawn. Bang, the knight goes to h5. We're looking at squares. We're looking at important squares. You're not pushing this, I take. You go here and support it, fine. Then I go here. Now what are you doing? You can't take this because it's pinned to the queen. Oh, you attack my queen, you saucy man. Queen d8. Dominate all the squares the knight can go to. Don't have to think about it anymore. The rook's hanging. Where's it going? Not here. Bang. And then bishop here. Pressure on the knight, which is the defender of this pawn. They might play f5. I'm very scared. Let's just take that. And then let's take that. 2 pawns up. Where are you going? Not there, I fork. Oh. Give me your rook. Give me that rook. They go for a little check. I mean, I feel it. I see what you're trying to do there. Don't know if I'm impressed, my friend. I don't know if I'm impressed. I want to sack this rook so bad. Oh, there's a check. Oh, no, there's a check. Oh, no, there's a check. We can save the knight, though. We can save the knight, though, here. I think this is amply held. Queen here, offer the trade, support the rook, maybe d5's a move. Just time. I'm up so much material. Check. That's not a check. What am I talking about? No. And we're going to have to flag him. It always ends like this. Whoa. Check. Here. Check. Here. Here. And there is the end of the game. Checkmate! With less than a second left. What on earth was that? Let's analyze. Okay, so here we are in the analysis. 62 move game. I played 14 inaccuracies. I am proud of all of these moves. Inaccuracies are of course what we aim to get here on the Will Taylor Chess channel. 2 mistakes. I mean, it was kind of a mess. It looks like a mess. It looks like the Weierstrass function, for those of you who study real analysis. This looks like some kind of fractal, very spiky, not differentiable, but nonetheless continuous. Anyway, sorry, 90% accuracy. Supposedly this wasn't horrible. And if you really squint your eyes, it went from, obviously our opponent had a very small opening advantage because we played like a freaky opening as per usual. And then once we sort of, after a little bit of a skirmish here where it fluctuated between basically drawing with small advantages either side, one side became any amount of significantly winning. We maintained that. relatively speaking. We were down in this black section here, and then once I became seriously winning, we again maintained that. So I'm not appalled by that at all. Let's go through that game, I guess. Okay, so e4, I mean, it was a mess. It was definitely a mess. But you're not watching my channel to see the best chess games ever played. You'd be watching Hikaru, you'd be watching Gotham Chess, you'd be watching someone far better at chess than me. Okay, so we got the Masters database open, e4, c5, g6. Okay, well, let's knock off one of our 14 inaccuracies. It becomes 13. Okay, you know what, boys? I'm gonna put a little number here, and this number, I mean, we're gonna start it at 14, of course, the amount of inaccuracies that I actually played, and we're gonna reduce it by 1 as I go through each one, systematically making excuses for why all of them are actually brilliant moves. So immediately, let's change that to 13. Because of course, this is an opening move. This is the hyper-accelerated dragon. This is theory, not an inaccuracy, of course. Bishop g7. So they go d5, we go d6. Knight here, a6. a4, here. Honestly, don't mind how I played this opening. This feels good. Apparently, look, I'm playing exactly as Hikaru played in 2009. In a game between him and Kjetil A. I don't know how to pronounce that, I do apologise. Bishop f4, knight h5. Okay, we do stray from the Hikaru game there, but it is my opponent, of course, that strays from the Hikaru game, rather than me, because I play exactly like Hikaru. So bishop f4, knight h5. We're now out of master games. However, move 8, uncharted territory to be in a master game. I'm happy with that. Bishop here, queen a5, queen d2, and b5. Beautiful. b5 clearly the best move for the reasons we discussed. Bishop e2, b4, the knight goes back. Queen c7, inaccuracy. Now, it's an inaccuracy because they have bishop h6. I should have played knight to f6. My thinking was that I wanted to get a5 in as quickly as possible. Okay, admittedly, I have literally zero excuse for queen c7. Knight f6 is just a better move attacking the pawn here. However, queen c7 did set up the idea of a5, that immortal bind here on the queen side, and a5 really did serve us well. So I'm going to say brilliant move. That was not an inaccuracy. Day castle kingside. a5 inaccuracy. Okay. But again, for the reasons we've just stated, yeah, not an inaccuracy at all. Definitely a brilliant move. Knight goes back. We come back to f6, finally. f3. Knight back to h5, inaccuracy. Guys, what? Okay, this one's a joke. That's clearly not an inaccuracy. Why? Because look, we just came from h5. So to go knight f6, then back to h5, our opponent is so psychologically manipulated by that. They are so spun. They have no idea what's going on. How is this guy getting away with just dancing around with his knight? That psychological manipulation is worth the centipawn difference in the evaluation of this and the best move. So no doubt that was a brilliant move as well. The bishop goes back. We put the bishop here. Inaccuracy? I don't think so. I don't think so, my friend. I don't think so, because this square got absolutely abused. Now, it's saying it's an inaccuracy because knight d3. And after here, the engine wants takes and takes. Now, if you're telling me that long term, the dark squared bishop in these dark squared holes is not going to absolutely exploit this weak king, you are joking. Let's get rid of that double-digit number and replace it with a 9. That was a brilliant move. Instead of knight e3, our opponent, of course, randomly moved a rook. I then played another inaccuracy. Instead of playing c4, we put the knight here, but again, clearly, I don't know how long this joke's going to be funny. Clearly not an inaccuracy, because the engine wants them to take. And again, same reasoning. You're telling me a bishop on g3 with pawns on f3 and h3 isn't going to be long-term destructive for my opponent. Brilliant move. However, of course, our opponent played knight to e3, a mistake, and finally I'm winning. Now, we took the bishop here. All jokes aside for a second, taking the bishop here has the same evaluation as taking the rook. So choosing between the bishop and the rook was actually, in terms of the engine, a matter of very, very little difference. But if we had chosen to take the rook, that material advantage would not have manifested for a while, because there are literally 8 pawns on the board here. Rooks thrive in open files. There are, by definition, 0 open files, not even semi-open files in this position. So even though my reasoning was slightly faulty, taking the bishop here, actually a good move. Queen takes, bishop a6, of course. The knight goes here, we drop back. Rook here, I push with c4. You go back. Bishop takes b2. Okay, I was proud of this. We drop back again. Admittedly, during the game, I wasn't very happy with this move because even though it seems like a positionally excellent bind, we give this knight an option to get back into the game very efficiently. And so, admittedly, I know this wasn't a great move. That will not stop me from calling it a brilliancy. It was brilliant, not inaccurate, brilliant. Because then, they couldn't push their pawn and the rook couldn't get into the game. The rook had to drop back. That is a wasted move. They might as well. Imagine we could make 2 moves in a row. That's effectively what we've done by playing c3 here. Definitely a brilliant move. And so we can definitely remove that as an inaccuracy. Opponent brings the knight in. I bring my knight in. They bring their knight in. I trade. inaccuracy, but you know, do we even have to mention the fact that it's clearly brilliant? Because after rook takes, of course, we go knight here, they go back, I push my pawn, which is again clearly a brilliant move. What, like this, it's just brilliant. What, I can't be bothered to explain now, because you know, after takes, which was a blunder, but of course my opponent had to do it. Because I put so much psychological pressure on them that they had to play this. The rook on the f-file became open, completely justifying the push of e6, so it was a brilliant move. I'm going to put one small disclaimer right now that this is a running joke. Please don't take it seriously if you're a relatively low elo player that actually listens to what I say seriously. But there is some truth in the fact that often inaccuracies will actually be the defining best moves of the game in an ironic way, in the sense that an inaccuracy will often be so hard to respond to for your opponent that because you're playing a human, it actually turns out to be the, you know, pragmatically the best move. I'm not claiming that that happens in all 14 instances. Maybe it happens in 2. However, let's carry on with the superb analysis. They drop their rook back, justifying exactly why this was a brilliant move. Complete wasted move. Now we can go knight here. Inaccurate because it wanted e5 anyway, but I'm saying, you know what? Let's put pressure on this. You can play f5. I knew they weren't going to do that. I knew it. I knew they'd defend here, which was also inaccurate, making this a brilliant move, and making this number drop to a mere 4, because now we can play e5. The rook's hanging, you can attack my queen, I'm going to drop back, which was an inaccuracy, but I have 46 seconds, and so it was actually a brilliant move, because it allowed, geometrically at least, for me to not worry about any of the squares this knight could go to. If we go here, I might even have to think about a fork. That's going to cost me time, I'm going to lose the game. So queen d8 was a brilliant move, let's just change that to a 3. And then they go back, we take, they take, bishop here. This is an interesting, I don't know why Lichess have changed their brilliant move mark to an orange question mark. That makes no sense, because normally that means mistake, but this must be a brilliant move, so I don't know. I don't know why they've changed it to that, because I knew my opponent wasn't going to play f5 and actually punish this, because, you know, if I take, then I lose my knight, because that's way too scary with a minute on the clock and a rook on the f-file. I knew they were going to blunder with rook to d4, allowing me to trade this off, which was the whole idea, to then play knight to f4. The queen goes here. I then pick up the rook, check, here, check, we block with the knight, savouring our material. Here, rook a6, queen c8 inaccuracy? I think you mean brilliant move, that is 2. And why brilliant? Why brilliant, I hear you clamouring to ask? Because we offer a queen trade in a position where we're way up material with 18.6 seconds on the clock. We also support the rook such that d5 might be an option to attack the queen, creating a bunch of things for my opponent to think about when they only have 33 seconds on the clock. They give me the check, I go here, they take, I drop back with my king, they take, I go here, they go back, king goes back for some reason, I don't remember why I did that, but apparently it was a good move. Maybe just a dodge rook f1. But at this point I have 13.9 seconds, so of course we grab the pawn, of course we give the check, of course I push another pawn, which was actually a brilliant move, as you'll see. So let's just quickly change that to 1. Because after they went bishop here, I did not take that. And not taking that was also a brilliant move, because then we can take here, we can go here, we can trade off the rook for the bishop and go queen f3, the final brilliant move, listed as an inaccuracy. That number goes to 0, and this one I actually really do like, because if rook takes, pawn takes, and now we promote the pawn. I mean, the actual best move was to play queen h2, of course, and after the king goes here, we can just push this pawn, because I mean, whatever you do, I mean, if you try and take the pawn, you lose the rook, and of course you can't take as it's pinned. But I really like queen f3, genuinely, to then play queen f5, a beautiful move to seal the deal. Our opponent just moved the king, we then picked up the rook. However, if they'd taken, we take, they take, and again we run. Just making the most of the fact that the pawn is as fast as the king in this kind of situation, and if we get one move ahead, the king will never catch us. So they went king here, and then it was a matter of some speedy pre-moving. Here, check, and checkmate. The king mated by a black queen on the black queen starting square. Seldom do you get a more poetic finish, and as we've now discovered, that game had 0 inaccuracies, 0 mistakes, 16 brilliant moves, and was a positional and tactical and speed masterclass. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.